This is a juicy one. It really is. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but it is the fear of abandonment and how this codependency tendency just shows up in so many areas of our life. But specifically, I want to talk about how we resist being in relationship, or we become so clingy, like we're a clingy koala, clinging to your leg, and you can't get the person off. Hi, I'm Tracey Knight, and I'm your codependency coach. And today, in this episode, we're going to be talking about abandonment. I think we've all experienced it at one level or another. And if you haven't, count yourself pretty lucky. Abandonment pretty much is where we feel a sense of loss, where we believed that someone who was important to us, perhaps it was a caregiver or someone who was charged with loving you and being a protector of you, abandoned the relationship, left the relationship without your awareness, knowledge, without communication, without you being able to understand what caused them to leave. I know I've dealt with this personally, and it's so subtle because it shows up in things like when parents get divorced. The child can, even though, like for me personally, my dad lived up the street. He lived in the adjacent neighborhood, but there still was this feeling of abandonment because he wasn't right there in the household. Now, do I think it was the best thing for my parents to divorce? Yes, I do. And I intellectually understand that, but that doesn't account for some of the other feelings that go with it. And if you don't have someone like a counselor, a therapist, or Coach Tracey Knight to talk it through with, then that can begin to show up in other areas of our life. And I tell you, a lot of times we think that this does not impact men, but I see it impacting men more often than not. So let's jump into it. We're talking a little bit about abandonment, which is really just this intense fear of being alone. And that can produce, what it can show up as is being very clingy in relationships. I have one client who, she loves being in relationships. She feels like she is made whole when she is in relationships, which is not the truth, by the way. I mean, in relationships, we want to come whole to a relationship and then attract someone who is whole so that we have two whole people. But anytime that we feel like someone completes us, and we hear that a lot of times in songs like, oh, you complete me. That's not cute. It's not cute. It really is not. We don't want to come as half people or a portion of ourselves, because then what you're doing is expecting the person to do for you what you won't even do for yourself. Right? No one can fill a bottomless pit. And so then what happens is when that person does something or needs to make an adjustment, you're going to feel like the person is abandoning you or abandoning what you think you all are creating together. So for some people, what happens in that situation where the person is, let's say that they're just starting to behave a little differently. And let me give you something really simple. Like maybe they decide to take on a project and now they start coming home a little later at night. And so you start thinking that they are abandoning the relationship because they have changed their pattern. They may not even be leaving the relationship, but you feel that way because the pattern has changed. Codependency. Okay. And so what happens is it causes some people, like my one client, to become clingy, to need that sense of safety and security that the person is not going to prematurely leave them, which in turn causes her to feel like she's bad, she's not worthy, she's not enough. And the person is not even thinking about it in that way. So that's one way that it shows up. Now, the consequence in that particular scenario is the person starts to feel smothered. They feel like they are limited in their choices. In other words, they don't feel free. They don't feel liberated. And true love is about allowing everyone to feel fully expressed in the relationship. Another type scenario, different type of client, is where we don't engage in relationships. So we keep one foot outside of the relationship at all times. No, I know nobody out there ever does that, right? Where you're halfway in the relationship and halfway out, or you keep the relationship superficial. Like you only have one night stands, or you're only having booty calls, So you're keeping it very surface level so that the relationship doesn't get too deep. Because if it gets too deep, now your heart becomes intertwined in the relationship, and there might be a fear of abandonment. And I see this a lot with men, to be honest with you. And now I'm starting to see it with women, but I've seen it a lot with men where they want to keep things on the surface. They don't want to get too emotionally involved, too emotionally connected. I'm going to tell you something. We got a lot of macho men out there, but if you really want to demonstrate that you are a courageous, strong man, open your heart. That will truly tell you just how courageous you are to be fully present and to be emotionally available in a relationship. This is where our true strength is built. When we are shutting our heart down, number one, you aren't just shutting your heart down to that person. You've also shut your heart down to yourself, and you've shut your heart down to even your immediate loved ones, like your children. Like, you may want to be giving love and full expression to your children, but it doesn't work that way. Either you are going to be expressed or you're going to be shut down. And so what ends up happening is we begin to create these generational patterns where children feel abandoned, and it's because the parents are not showing up fully expressed. So that's a huge consequence. And if we really want to start breaking these patterns, what I want to encourage you to do is, tip number one is to check how cynical you have become around relationships. How cynical have you become around men or women? How judgmental are you? Do you think all men do this or all women do that? Or do you believe that if you get too close, that you need an escape route? This idea that I need to have a plan A, plan B, plan C. No. I don't believe in none of that. If you have plan A, B, and C, then you're not focused on plan A, which is to be present in the relationship. Okay, so you want to be mindful of these patterns that are really showing up, which are indicators of codependency. So the question is, what can I do about it? Well, what you can do about it is hit me up. Below, you will find several links. I want to invite you to take our Codependency Boot Camp, which can help you completely eradicate some of these patterns in as little as 30 days. For some of us, we may need a little longer, but the Codependency Boot Camp is definitely going to jumpstart your game and completely transform the way that you relate to yourself and relationships. All you have to do is have the courage to click the link below. You can also book a call with me. A link will be there, or is there, for that as well. The other thing I would love to do is to hear from you. So in the comments section, add your questions, your comments, your concerns about being more available and express, opposed to abandoning the relationship prematurely. A lot of people don't understand that they are even leaving the relationship before the relationship even gets started. That's not a winning scenario. It's just not. So like us, tag us, share us, and subscribe to the channel so that I can support you on this journey to becoming a fully expressed woman or a brave man. Brave stands for balanced, resilient, authentic, vulnerable, and emotionally evolved. I'm Tracey Knight, and I'm your self-mastery coach. I want to remind you that today is the day that we take back, transform, and begin to win at the game called life.